Hello, welcome to another Traveller's Guide IELTS video. Today we are looking at Reading Test 1 from IELTS Academic Book 18. We're going to look at the questions, go through the answers and explain why these are the correct answers. If you find this video useful, press the thumbs up, give it a like, leave a comment below with your opinions and subscribe to Traveller's Guide IELTS for more videos like this one. So the IELTS Academic Reading Test consists of 3 different passages to read. There are a total of 40 questions and you have 1 hour to complete everything. The number of correct answers you get directly correlates with a band score. So if you're aiming for a band score of 7, for example, you need to get 30 to 32 correct answers. As we go through the test, you can always count up your own score and see how you got on at the end. Right, we're going to start with reading section 1, and it says you should spend 20 minutes on questions 1 to 13, which are based on reading passage below. Now you have 1 hour total. It does suggest for each one that you spend 20 minutes, but that's just a guideline. You can spend as much or as little on each section as you want, just as long as it takes. So passage 1, the title is Urban Farming. Urban meaning in a city. Then there's a little blurb underneath which says, in Paris, urban farmers are trying a soil-free approach to agriculture that uses less space and fewer resources. Could it help cities face the threats to our food supplies? Okay, so that gives us an idea of what this passage is going to be about. Farming in cities using a method that doesn't use soil. The first set of questions, 1 to 3, you need to complete the sentences below. Now it says choose no more than 2 words and or a number from the passage for each answer. So you could use 1 word or 2 words, 1 word and a number, 2 words and a number, maybe just a number. And when it comes to using a number, you can write the digits or you can write the words. Both are okay, but make sure it is from the passage as well. So first of all, we have the title Urban Farming in Paris. Vertical tubes are used to grow strawberries, something, and herbs. So we get the idea that the first one must be some kind of thing that you can grow. So we're looking for another example. Hopefully you know strawberries and herbs, so we're looking for something else. 2, there will eventually be a daily harvest of as much as what in weight of fruit and vegetables. As much as something in weight. So it's a measurement of the weight of the total amount of fruit and veg that is grown. Okay. And number 3, it may be possible that the farm's produce will account for as much as 10% of the city's what overall. Notice the word there, produce, is a noun rather than produce, which is the verb. Okay, so dealing with the first part, we're going to look for something that mentions vertical tubes, strawberries and herbs. And we can find that in this paragraph. Here we have strawberries, mentioned a couple of times, tubes and vertical tubes. And then we've got herbs, such as basil, sage, and peppermint. These are all examples of herbs, which is why I've highlighted them in green. So they are not the correct answer, but they might be, you might be tempted to choose those as the answer, but they're just examples. So can we see in this passage another example of a type of crop or food that could be grown other than strawberries and herbs? Well, here we have the word lettuces. Lettuces there is the answer for question 1. On to number 2. Now we're wanting something about daily harvest and weight, I think here is probably the most important word. So if we look at this part, we've got harvest every day, which is doing the same job as daily harvest. We've got fruit and vegetables there mentioned as well, although that might be in other parts too. But can we see something about weight? Well, there we have up to as much as 1,000 kilograms, 1,000 kg, kilograms. So that's going to be our answer. So we can harvest as much as 1,000 kilograms in weight. Okay, so we know that kg is a measurement of weight. And on to number 3 for this part. Here we have the figure 10%. It can be quite easy to find in the passage numbers or words with capital letters. So let's see if we can find 10%. Here it is mentioned here. When it says as much as 10%, there we have the phrase between 5% and 10%. So that was doing that part. It may be possible in the question matches up with there's no reason why you shouldn't. And will there in the question showing it's in the future tense, and that matches with the word eventually. So which word, now that we've highlighted these ones, needs to go in the space? Consumption. Consumption is how much is consumed. So that is the answer. So even though it said no more than 2 words and or a number, 2 of the answers are just 1 word. The other is 1 number and then a units. You could write the whole word kilograms, I suppose. But okay. On to questions 4 to 7. There is a table to complete. This time we want 1 word only from the passage. So there we can see there are 2 sections, one about intensive farming, one about aeroponic urban farming. Don't worry if you don't know what the word aeroponic means. Most native speakers wouldn't know this word either. They do like to use words that people don't generally know in the passages, but it gives you an example of what it is. It's a way of farming where no soil is used and you add nutrients to the water. But first, let's go back to intensive farming and look at question 4. A wide range of what is used. Okay, we can find this bit, techniques pollute the air. We can find that in intensive farming techniques produce greenhouse gases. So this gives us an idea of where the answer to number 4 will be. A wide range of what? Well, we've got 17 different pesticides. 17 different is a wide range of. So pesticides, these are chemicals that kill insects or other types of pests. So that is your answer for number 4. Moving on to number 5. Before it, we've got quality not good. So we can find this phrase, the quality is so poor. That shows that we're in the right area. Then we're looking for varieties of fruit and vegetables chosen that can survive long what? Okay, so we've got varieties. Chosen is the same as selected. Survive, withstand. Long, substantial. So that all points towards the word journeys. That's the next word in the passage, and that's what fits in here. Make sure we include the S on the end, because if it was just journey, it would need a journey or the journey. Then on to number 6. Something receive very little of overall income. So very little overall income. The price I pay will be the income. 80% of that goes to wholesalers and transport companies. So wholesalers and transport companies are receiving a lot of the income, not the producers. So this shows the producers are receiving very little. Okay, so number 6, producers. That's the people that grow the foods. So 4 pesticides, 5 journeys, 6 producers. Then on to number 7, about aeroponic farming. So this bit with no soil used is a soil-free method. Nutrients, organic nutrients, and recycled. Pumped around a closed circuit show that it is being recycled. So we know we're in the right area here. But number 7, produce chosen because of its. So you can select, that's chosen, crop varieties, produce, because of its or for their, and then the next word is flavour. So that must be the answer. Flavour. Notice this is the UK spelling of flavour. Right, and that is why that is the correct answer there. There is another word here that I've highlighted next, pick, which is kind of the same. It can be the same as chosen, but in this case, pick means to harvest. So when you pick vegetables, you harvest them, you collect them. Questions 8 to 13 in section 1 are true, false, not given questions. So there will be a statement, and you have to decide if the statement is true, if it agrees with the information in the passage, false if it contradicts or disagrees with the information in the passage, or not given if there is no information about it. Now in these questions there's always at least one true, at least one false, at least one not given. So let's look there. Number 8. Urban farming can take place above or below ground. Now immediately I'm thinking this is likely to be true, because why not? But is there evidence of that in the passage? So let's see. I've taken these 2 different parts of the passage to find some examples. So above ground, we've got right at the start of the passage, it mentions an urban rooftop farm. So it's on the top of a building, that's definitely above the ground. However, we also later talk about mushrooms grown in underground car parks. Underground, same as below ground. So therefore, that is true. Okay, that is what I expected. And sure enough, we found examples of both to prove that true is correct. Number 9. Some of the equipment used in aeroponic farming can be made by hand. Okay, so equipment is a key point here. Let's look at this part which deals with equipment. It says that the equipment weighs little, so it's quite light. It can be installed on any flat surface. It's cheap to buy and also cheap to run. But are any of these things the same as made by hand? In fact, there's no information here about how this equipment is made at all. So for this one, not given is the correct answer. Number 9, not given. Then 10. Urban farming relies more on electricity than some other types of farming. Okay, let's have a look here. And in this part, we've got electricity mentioned. So urban farming uses more electricity than others. Well, some other types of farming, we've got some techniques there towards the end, but more is a key word. Does it use more? In fact, it says it consumes a tiny fraction of, so a very small amount of. So no, that's the opposite. So in this case, the answer should be false. Question 11. Fruit and vegetables grown on an aeroponic urban farm are cheaper than traditionally grown organic produce. I'm not sure about this one, what to expect. So let's have a look here. Well, it did mention before, we saw this before, that it's cheap to run. That doesn't mean that they cost less to the buyer. So that doesn't really deal with it. However, we then say produce grown this way, fruit and vegetables grown this way as the aeroponic farm, sell at prices that are higher than intensive agriculture, but lower than soil-based organic growers. So we've actually got information about it costing more, but also costing less. So we have to make sure that we're definitely comparing with the right type. So we had traditionally grown organic produce. That's similar to the organic growers that it mentions. So it's lower, right. Prices are lower than soil-based organic growers. Therefore, it is cheaper, and the answer is true. This is a tricky one because it first mentions how the prices are higher. So you might think that that's going to be false, but make sure you go right to the end of the sentence to find the organic growers to find that it is actually true. And the cheap to run part that we saw before is not relative to this. Okay. Number 12. Most produce can be grown on an aeroponic farm, urban farm, at any time of the year. So any time of the year here is now important. In this section, we noticed that much of the produce, that's quite similar to most produce, is suited to the summer months. But the question said at any time of the year. So this one is going to be false. So actually it's not any time of year, it's mostly in the summer. 13. Beans take longer to grow on an urban farm than other vegetables. Right, can we find a mention of beans? Here we are. This says beans tend to take up a lot of space for not much return. Okay, so they take more space, but do they take longer to grow than other vegetables? Does it compare to other vegetables? No, not given, really, is the answer there. So there's no information on how long they take to grow. Okay, that's the end of section 1. So we now move on to reading section 2. And this one, again, says 20 minutes, just a suggestion. Questions 14 to 26. And the title of this passage is Forest Management in Pennsylvania, USA. How managing low-quality wood, also known as low-use wood, for bioenergy can encourage sustainable forest management. Right, this is an environment topic, which is a very common topic in IELTS reading. It's about forest management. It doesn't really matter that it's in the USA. That's just the name of a place. So if you don't know Pennsylvania, don't worry about it. That's not important. Looking at the first group of questions, 14 to 18, we need to decide which paragraph contains the following information. So we have A to G. Those are our options. We need to find this information in one of those passages. This is very important though, right in the middle of the screen it says, you may use any letter more than once. Usually when it says this, it means you will use a letter more than once. So don't think I've already used B, I can't use B again. For example, you can. Right. Let's start with 14. Bad outcomes for a forest when people focus only on its financial reward. So we need to find part of the passage which section contains this information. We're going to focus on financial. Look for words that mean the same as financial. That's to do with money. And bad outcomes, so negative things that can happen. If we look in paragraph B, we can see a few different financial words, value, economic, higher value, this kind of things. Bad outcomes, so junk trees, junk is a negative word meaning rubbish. It can shade out desirable regeneration, means it's stopping what you want to happen. Decrease the health of a stand. Stand is an area of woodland. So decrease the health is a bad outcome and make it more vulnerable to weather and disease. So this shows bad outcomes for the forest when you're only focused on the financial reward. So for question 14, the answer on your answer sheet should be B. Number 15. Which section contains a reference to the aspects of any tree that contribute to its worth? Okay, I've gone to section A for this one because worth is similar to value. So a tree's value just depends on several factors similar to aspects. And then it's going to give some examples: species, size, form, condition, quality, function, accessibility. Okay, so these are the aspects that contribute to the worth or value of a tree. So 15, the answer should be A. 16 now. Mention of the potential use of wood to help run vehicles. So for me, the word that stands out here is the word vehicles. I'm going to be looking for examples of vehicles and then see if the wood is being used to help run them. So in paragraph C, I've seen lorries and cars. These are examples of vehicles. Then if we go back a bit, wood can be made into liquid fuels. So here we are using the wood to run the vehicles, use fuel to run vehicles such as lorries and cars. So question 16, our answer should be C. 17. Which paragraph shows examples of insects that attack trees? Okay, over here in paragraph E, we've got some insects such as beetle and moth. You should be familiar with beetle and moth. They're quite well known. We also have things like the hemlock woolly adelgid and the emerald ash borer. These are also insects. You may not have heard of these insects. I hadn't. But from the context, we can tell that they might be, because it says that pests, including, to name a few. So are they attacking the trees? They cause issues. There's an outbreak there mentioned towards the end. Pests and pathogens tend to attack things. So, and it's about trees. So there we go. E is the correct answer for 17. On to 18. Which paragraph shows an alternative name for trees that produce low-use wood? Now we've seen this before, so as soon as I saw this question, I already knew what this was going to be. But here we can see the term low-use wood, and then it goes on to say some people even call these junk trees. So this is an alternative name. Even if you couldn't find the alternative name, you can find the right answer just by seeing which paragraph mentions low-use wood, and then the word call, like name. So you don't need to know what the alternative name is, you just need to find where it's talked about. So the answer to number 18 is B. Right. And yeah, just to mention again, we've already used the letter B, but we can use each letter more than once. So that's why I've got B again. The next part, 19 to 21, we're looking at some purposes and a list of timber cuts. We need to match each purpose with the correct cut. So we're choosing the letters A, B, or C. And again, it says you may use any letter more than once. Right, here are the list of timber cuts: a TSI cut, a salvage cut, a shelter wood cut. And the three questions that we've got: which of these cuts is to remove trees that are diseased, to generate income across a number of years, or to create a forest whose trees are close in age? Now for these questions, I would kind of tackle these backwards. So instead of looking at the question and seeing what that is about, I'm going to look at the list of cuts and then match them up with the appropriate question, because there are three cuts and they're easier to find in the text. Okay, so I'm going to look for TSI cut, salvage cut, and shelter wood cut. Here we go. So first of all, section D has the TSI cut, timber stand improvement cut, as it's called. Now I'm going to look at the 3 different questions and see if any of them fit in here. So 19, to remove trees that are diseased. We've got some different words that mean remove, cut down, removing, less crowded, but there's nothing there about diseased. So I'm going to say that 19 is not TSI cut. 20, generate income. We've got high value across a number of years though. I can't see anything in here talking about a length of time. So I'm going to discount 20 for A as well. And then finally, 21 is talking about trees that are close in age. Nothing here about the age of trees. So TSI cut doesn't seem to fit with any of them. But we might come back to this later. Let's move on then to a salvage cut. Salvage cut is mentioned in paragraph E. If we look at to remove trees that are diseased, well, we've got pests and pathogens, we've got sick trees, and we've got these types of cut reduce the number of sick trees. So we're removing trees that are diseased. So the salvage cut does seem to match with number 19 to remove trees that are diseased. So I'm going to put that down on my answer sheet, 19B. Now, this is a tricky part which can catch people out, because the correct answer was found in paragraph E, but the options are A, B, or C for the type of cut. So it doesn't matter the letter of the paragraph. What matters is that it's B, a salvage cut. So number 19, we're going with B. While we're here, let's just check the other ones. So anything here about a number of years? I don't see anything. Close in age? No. So I'm going to move on from there and then go to a shelter wood cut. This is in paragraph F. Now, if my previous answers are correct, then 20 and 21 should both be found in here. Let's just first of all double check that there's nothing here about diseased trees. No, there's not. So that is not in this section. Just double check. So let's go over here to number 20. To generate income, the money that comes in across a number of years, over a decade or more. Now this comes down to knowing what the word decade means. This is a very popular word in IELTS reading and listening. Decade means 10 years. So over a decade or more is going to be at least 10 years. So yes, number 20 is found in paragraph F, which is about a shelter wood cut, which is option C. So question 20, C. And now the last part, 21, to create a forest whose trees are close in age. Well, this in the middle of this paragraph, it says, all trees are at a similar point in their growth. Now that suggests they're all the same kind of age, because they're at a similar point in their growth. Okay, trees don't all grow at the same kind of rate, but that's what it's suggesting here. So 21, yes, that is also found in paragraph F, shelter wood cut. So the answer is C. So for 19, 20, and 21, you should have written B, C, C. The next part of section 2, there are some sentences that we need to complete, choosing one word only from the paragraph for each answer. So remember, one word only. 22, some dead wood is removed to avoid the possibility of. 23, the something from the tops of trees can help improve soil quality, and so on. We're not going to read through all of those. Now, however, it doesn't tell you where in the section, in the passage, that these answers are going to be found. So, could be difficult. However, we've just looked at 3 different types of cut in D, E, and F. So let's go on to paragraph G, the final paragraph. These are the final questions, and see if we can notice anything. Well, question 1 starts with dead wood, and G starts with deadwood removal. So we are in the right place. Avoid the possibility of is similar to the word prevention in meaning. So what word should go in here? Remember, one word only. So what are we preventing? Fire. Avoid the possibility of fire, fire prevention. So fire is the correct answer for question 22. 23, we're looking for the tops of trees. Well, I can find that here. There's a mention of soil as well. But what from the tops of cut trees? It says the tops of trees that have been cut should be left on the site so that their nutrients cycle back into the soil. We know that this has to be a noun because there's a the from the tops of trees. So which noun in this sentence fits nicely in there? Nutrients. Again, this is a very common IELTS word. The nutrients from the tops of trees can help improve soil quality. 24. Some damaged trees should be left as they're what provide habitats for a range of creatures. Well, habitats is mentioned in the next line. And a range of creatures, we have woodpeckers, a kind of bird, bats, and small mammals. So these are the habitats, but where? Where do they go? Trees with many cavities are extremely important. So the damaged trees should be left because their cavities provide habitats for a range of creatures. This is a difficult word. Cavities is another word for holes. It's often used in dentistry if you have a cavity in your teeth, a hole in your teeth that needs to be filled in. Okay, on to 25. Some trees that are small, such as what, are a source of food for animals and insects. When we've got a such as, that shows that we're looking for an example of a small tree. So if we go over here, we've got small trees there, trees that are small. A source of food for animals and insects, food for wildlife. So where can we find an example of a small tree? Well, it says, for example, many species like hawthorn provide food for animals. Hawthorn there is the correct answer. Hawthorn is a type of tree that has bright red berries in the winter. Okay, and then number 26, any trees that are what should be left to grow as they add to the variety of species in the forest? Well, variety of species matches up with structural diversity, and should be left to grow should also stay behind. So trees that are what? We're looking for an adjective here that describes the trees. Rare is the correct answer. So rare species, trees that are rare. That means not very common or not many of them. Unusual. So rare is the correct answer. 22 fire, 23 nutrients, 24 cavities, 25 hawthorn, and 26 rare. Right, we're now on to the final section, reading section 3. And this passage is questions 27 to 40, and the title is Conquering Earth's Space Junk Problem. And we saw the word junk earlier in this reading test with junk trees, junk meaning rubbish. So this is about rubbish floating around in the space around Earth, and conquering means defeating or overcoming. And the subtitle says, satellites, rocket shards and collision debris are creating major traffic risks in orbit around the planet. Researchers are working to reduce these threats. So this gives you an idea that the passage is about space and a problem in space that people are trying to fix. It has 6 sections, A to F. Which section contains the following information? So we've seen this type of question before. We need to find this information in the passage. And we'll start with 27. Which section has a reference to the cooperation that takes place to try and minimize risk? Cooperation means working together. In paragraph C, I can see that the Interagency Space Debris Coordination Committee, right, interagency means between different groups, coordination means working together, similar as cooperation. So that is there. And minimizing risk. We've got risks such as explosions and pressurized material, and to minimize it, there are guidelines that have been issued, venting and advising lowering satellites. So C will be the correct answer for question 27. 28. Where can we find an explanation of a person's aims? Now, there are a few different people mentioned in this passage, and they might have different opinions, but aims, that is something that they are hoping to do or hoping to achieve. In this section, it talks about Ja, and he says that I want to make space a place that is safe to operate, that is free and useful for generations to come. So Ja is a person's name, and there are his aims. That's what he wants to achieve. And this was found in section F. Now, the paragraphs or the sections in this reading passage, there's sometimes two paragraphs in one section. So this was the second half of section F. Okay. Moving on, 29. Where can we find a description of a major collision that occurred in space? Collision is like a crash, or two things bumping into each other. Well, over here, I found this bit about disasters. For collision, we've got a satellite smashed into another satellite. This is a type of collision, smashed into, like crashed. Okay, so this was in paragraph A, the second half of section A, rather. 29A. 30. Where can we find a comparison between tracking objects in space and the efficiency of a transportation system? So I'm going to look for an example of a transportation system, some kind of transport. Well, in section E, I found managing traffic on the roads or in the air. That's talking about traffic systems and air traffic controlling as well. Comparison, it's similar to. Efficiency can match up with this part, 1 meter in accuracy, showing how efficient it is. So the answer here is E. Next question, 31. Where can we find a reference to efforts to classify space junk? Classify means to identify or to give a rating, that kind of thing. In section B, mention space junk there at the start. And classify is well, the word taxonomy means to classify, usually used with animal species or plants. But here we also have some other, highlighted in green, other ways of classifying space junk: assessing what is in orbit, compile a massive data set, measuring the size and shape of an object. So these are examples of how they would classify, and taxonomy is a word that means to classify. Okay, so, and space debris is another way of saying space junk. So all of that points to answer B for question 31. Next, 32 to 35, we have a summary, and we need to choose one word only to fill it in. Here it is. It starts with the title, the Interagency Space Debris Coordination Committee. And we've seen that before when we looked at the question about cooperation. So I would expect the answers to be in that section. Let's look at the first part first. The committee gives advice on how the something of space can be achieved. So let's get that part up when it mentioned Interagency Space Debris Coordination Committee. They give advice on what? Well, and giving advice is similar to providing guidelines. There's a mention of space and committee to just point us into the right place. Guidelines here is the key word. So what are the guidelines about? Well, it's about sustainability. So that's how things can be looked after for the future, that kind of thing. So sustainability goes into question 32. Next, I'm going to add a little bit more from section C, because the next part, 33, talks about unused something. And unused, a similar word to leftover. And then it mentions pressurized materials that we've also seen. So what is unused? What is leftover? It is the fuel. So question 33, the answer we need is fuel. And we've seen fuel before in the woodland section as well. Okay, and on to 34, pressurized material that could cause what? Well, we've seen the pressurized material, we're in the same bit. Could cause, might lead to explosions. So 34 is explosions, 32 sustainability, 33 fuel, and 34 explosions. These are all found in this little section here that we saw before. The next part there for question 35, although operators of large satellite constellations accept they will have obligations as stewards of space, Holger Krag points out that operators become what are unlikely to prioritize removing the satellites from space. For this part, I would look at the person's name, Holger Krag. That has capital letters, it's easy to find here. And here the name is mentioned a couple of times in this section. So, operators that become what? This part, towards the end, probably not going to spend money to remove their satellites from space, matches up with unlikely to prioritize removing their satellites from space, but what they become. So this is a little bit tricky, this one, I think. Operators that become something. What happens to those that fail or go bankrupt? So the answer has to be in fail or go bankrupt, but we need one word only. Become there is a verb. Fail and go are verbs. So become what? Go bankrupt. Bankrupt is the only word from this section that fits in there grammatically. Fail makes sense, but you wouldn't say operators that become fail, because both of these are verbs. If it said operators that fail, that would make sense, but because the word become is there, we need to choose bankrupt. Okay, bankrupt is when you run out of money. And the final section here, questions 36 to 40, we're matching up a statement with a person, A, B, C, or D. Now, like we saw before, it doesn't matter the letter that you find the answer in, it's the letter of the person from the options. So be careful not to put the paragraph letter. And again, it says you may use any letter more than once. Okay, well, there are 5 questions and 4 options, so we will have to use them more than once. So we have 4 names here: Carolyn Froy, Holger Krag, Marlon Sorge, and Moriba Jia. We've seen a couple of those names before. So, who said knowing the exact location of space junk would help prevent any possible danger? For this one, I'm going to go to section D. And here, if you knew, knowing the exact location precisely where everything was, and then prevent any possible danger, almost never have a problem. This is matching up with the statement. So who said that? Marlon Sorge. Right, and here's the tricky part. Marlon Sorge is option C. So the answer is C, even though the answer is in paragraph D. Next, space should be available to everyone and should be preserved for the future. And we've seen this before. These were in the aims of ja from an earlier question. Suitable for everyone, available to everyone rather, is free, preserved for the future, generations to come is about the future. So this is ja or moriba ja. D is the correct answer for 37. 38. Who said a recommendation regarding satellites is widely ignored? We've seen this bit before as well when it talked about explosions. So this bit here. Recommendation is to advise something or to set a goal. And satellites mentioned here, although satellites are mentioned in other places too. However, this bit about being ignored. Only about half have abided by this goal. Okay, so it sounds like about half people have, or agencies have taken this into account. The other half have ignored it. Therefore, this was Holger Krag. So the answer to 38 should be B. Then 39, there is conflicting information about where some satellites are in space. So we're talking about locations. Now this section F shows conflicting information. Conflicting is like opposite views or something that says something different. And about where. So the US and Russian sources contain two completely different orbits for the same object. An orbit is the path that it takes around the Earth in space, so that shows where it is at any given time. Conflicting information, well, US and Russia are giving different information. So this again is ja. So moriba ja, D is the correct answer for 39. We can use each answer more than once, and we have done again. And the final question of this reading test, number 40. Who said there is a risk that we will not be able to undo the damage that occurs in space? Over here in this section, we had the phrase, we will reach a point of no return. A point of no return means you cannot undo what has been done. And who said this? It was Caroline Freud. So A is the correct answer for question 40. Right, we have now reached the end of the speaking test. Here are all of the answers. If you have done this test yourself, you can then have a look at all these answers. A couple of things to mention. So for number 3, I put the answer was consumption. But if you wrote food consumption, that would also be accepted. So it did say 2 words and or a number, or no more than 2 words and or a number. So consumption is correct, but food consumption would also be correct. And for question 7, I used the UK spelling of flavour. If you use the US spelling of flavour, that would also be given, even though the passage does have the UK spelling in it. Right, if you want to pause the video and check your answers, you can. And then check your score. So match up the number of correct answers with the band score that you get. Remember, of course, that this is just the reading section, and your final IELTS score also takes into account speaking, listening, and writing. So this is just the reading section. But if you did get some answers wrong, and I'm sure everyone would get some answers wrong, go back and look and see why the answer was wrong and see if you can understand what you need to do to make sure you get the right answer. Perhaps it's a vocabulary issue, or maybe it's a grammar thing, but go back and see if you can understand why. Right, well, thanks very much for watching this video. Please click on the screen to see another of my videos. Good luck with your ongoing studies and your upcoming test when it happens. Remember to give me a thumbs up if you liked the video or found it useful. Subscribe to the channel and leave a comment down below telling me your opinion of the video and of the test. I will see you again another time for another Traveller's Guide IELTS video. But in the meantime, good luck and goodbye for now.